Hey everybody, it's Scott from ScottyTheNJMedium.com. Welcome back to my official podcast. Today we're going to talk about spirit guides, we're going to talk about ghost hunters, and we're going to talk about getting to identify your own psychic capabilities and how to start utilizing them. And then we're going to build off of that from podcast to podcast, okay? So this is kind of be like a free little course for you. So if you've been following along at ScottyTheNJMedium.com, I did a lot of writing and blogging. Oftentimes I'll probably reference that. So to start, that's all free as well. So go back to that website, ScottyTheNJMedium.com. Start getting spun up on the way that I do things. And then you can listen to the podcast along the way. And you could start getting your own gifts up to speed and start doing your own things, which is really what I'm here for. I want to talk about ghosts and paranormal and spirit and all that kind of stuff. So let's get to it. Let's get to spirit guides. Spirit guides are really awesome. Who are they? Where do they come from? Why do we have them? And how can we meet them? Let's talk about who are they. A lot of people have, I think, a misconception about who these spirits are. So a lot of folks think that it's got to be somebody that's related to you or that you knew in life, and that they are the people who are going to come back and protect you, while you're still here and going through your human experience. But really what I think happens is that we get assigned some, and of course we have some folks that may come back and protect us after they decease and come back spiritually, but I don't think that that's always the case, at least not for me. So my own grandmother, my mom's mom, passed away quite a while ago, and she is somebody who I believe is a protector of mine. I speak to her fairly often, less now than I used to when I first started really getting in tune. I don't feel as though I need as much protection from her, but she's still around. So if you feel like you're listening to this and you're like, well, Scott, my deceased relative or friend definitely is somebody who I feel like protects me. Yeah, probably they are. I'm just saying that it's not always the case that it's going to be people you know. So I have several spirit guides, one who has never incarnated as a human being, and I don't know how to explain any better, but I don't think I've ever actually held a physical body. They're just sort of like this energy that's out there that I connect with, and it's really interesting to communicate with that entity. And then I have two very human souls that I communicate with, and they add to my practicality, because sometimes I do get carried away with being, especially like when I want to purchase things. Sometimes like I'll get spun up like on an idea, and if you watch any of my vlogs, like I'm like, well, I want to vlog, so I'm gonna look at this $300 camera, and then an hour and a half later I'm looking at like a $5,000 camera, and I have no need for it. So one of my guys will step in and be like, hey, you don't need that, knock it off, get your finger off the clicker, do not order that. And sometimes that voice takes the voice of like my wife, and she's like, stop, don't do it, you're going to get in trouble. And then I stop and I don't order said expensive item. So that person is specifically there to protect me in that very practical way. Then I have another one who is somebody who's sort of like the angel on my shoulder that gives me the direction that I need sometimes, the practical way to go to explain things. So in order, for instance, doing this podcast, it's something I've been thinking about doing. I tried to jumpstart it a couple times, and it just never was right for me. Then recently, I got like a little push from this said spirit guide, and here we are. This is episode number 8, I believe. So it's going, and I continue to want to do it. So that's really important, and it's part of my way of getting things out to everybody. And that is really what that particular guide does. They help me move forward in what I'm doing. So that's who they are and what they do. Where are they? Well, they're not always around. A lot of times I have to ask for them and say like, hey, are you around? Can I talk to you? Or they'll come to me when I need them and I'm not asking for them. So they're kind of in the wings waiting for me to need their guidance, which is the same for most of our spirit guides, I would say. Sometimes they are in our face and we're just not paying close attention, and we should be. So, to put that in perspective, we'll talk about my main spirit guide. Now, if you've had readings by me, or if I've taught you a little bit, or we've conversed about spirit guides, I've definitely told you this story about my spirit guide, and this is going to go into connecting with your own spirit guide. So, for a long time, probably a couple months, I was hooked on wanting bamboo, like a little bamboo plant, or maybe making a bamboo garden in the front yard. Just bamboo. It was on my mind like all the time. I wanted to go to the flea market and get it. I was seeing it everywhere. The town that I live in actually has bamboo like all over the place here in New Jersey. And I had never noticed it. I've lived in this town most of my life, and I never noticed bamboo until I started really wanting it. And I couldn't explain it because I don't know why I'd want bamboo, period. It doesn't make any sense. I'm not like a plant person. So I thought it was really interesting looking back at this. So I keep wanting it, I keep wanting it, I keep wanting it. And in the meantime, I'm going on this adventure of my own, and I'm wanting to meet my spirit guides because I'm doing mediumship, but it's kind of like, for lack of better words, willy-nilly. I'm just doing it, and I don't know really what I'm doing. I'm just connecting with spirits and doing readings. And I didn't really have any guidance or anything that I really could connect with uh, on the other side to really help me along. My grandmother, who was deceased, my mom's mom, was helping me tremendously, but she was a very human soul, and I felt like there was more. So I asked a very well-known medium her opinion about how to go about meeting more spirit guides, and she gave me a piece of advice, which I'm going to give to you in a couple minutes. And I took her advice, and immediately upon taking her advice and implementing it, I had the name of my spirit guide. So what did I do? I got it. I went onto my computer and I Googled the phonetic sound that I heard, which was Henon, and I spelled it Henon, and I put it in the Google, and Google spit out that it is a breed of bamboo. So again, I don't have any experience. I didn't know there were different species of bamboo. I'm sure that like if I thought about it or I paid attention in science class, I would know that there were different species of everything on the planet. But I didn't really ever give it thought. Bamboo is bamboo. But it's a breed of bamboo, Henon. And I thought that that was really interesting. And it also refers to a mathematical equation which was thought up by some mathematician that explains the irregular orbit of one star around another. So most of them are circular, which means that they go in a circle like our orbit with the sun. It's very circular. But then there are double stars, obviously, out there that they orbit each other in more of an oval pattern. And this mathematician named Henon came up with this mathematic equation. So it has to do with stars, and this name also has to do with bamboo, which I had been like wanting. So when I said earlier that sometimes our spirit guides are kind of kicking us in the face to get us to pay attention, it may not be in the most obvious way to us, and then everything is kind of revealed when it should be. And that is exactly what happened to me. So I bet you're wondering, like, Scott, what was the piece of advice that you got? Well, I got to sit down for a couple minutes with, I think most of you know who this is if you're listening to this, Amy Allen from the Dead Files. And I spoke to her for a few minutes, and I asked her, how am I going to make connection with my spirit guides? What would you do? And she said a couple things to me. She said, number one, if you decide to do this and go full in, there's no turning back. So make sure it's what you want. But by the time I had spoke to her, I knew in my soul that this is what I wanted. Although I'm going to tell you the same thing. Make sure it's what you want, because there's really no turning back. Once the faucet's on, it's really difficult to turn off. Okay? Number two, the easiest thing. Or at least I thought it was easy. If it's not for you, don't feel bad, because we're going to get through it. She said, go home. Whatever you do for meditation, before you start it, say out loud, I want to meet my spirit guides, please give me a name. And whatever name comes in during your meditation, that is going to be the name of at least one spirit guide. So that's what I did. I went home, I did my meditation, and I did exactly what you said. I said, I want to hear the name of my spirit guide and I want to meet them. And guess what? I got it. And I got the name Henon. Henon. That's my main spirit guide. Has never embodied any physical being and has always just been kind of this etheric being out there, who's probably a part of the Akash, which is something we'll talk about later, which is really neat. Not later today, but later in other podcasts. And we'll talk about the Akashic Records. In any case, since I connected with that being, I've gotten much stronger in my readings, much more focused, and my abilities have sharpened. And anytime that I feel out of focus, that's when I meditate, that's who I ask for guidance, and I usually get it. And if I'm not getting it, I know there's a reason why I'm not, and I'm calm and patient with that because I'll tell you, like, we're going to have to say a million times. If it's not happening right now, don't worry, it will happen. It'll be in the path when it's supposed to be, okay? Now with that, let's talk a little about Ghost Hunters. Ghost Hunters has been pretty neat this season. I post up on it about the show on Scotty the NJ Medium's Paranormal discussion page on Facebook. So if you want to join the discussion, hop in on there. It's all very lighthearted and good. We just make observations and talk about what we're seeing on the screen and the things that are happening during the investigation. Now, last week's investigation was pretty neat because it was in a set of buildings that started off, let's see how I wrote some notes here. The location started off with one structure that was built during the Civil War, and I think it was used to house like wounded soldiers and people in recovery, so sort of a rehab. Then as time went on, they added more structures and it became like an old folks assisted living. And what happened in the episode, spoiler alert, if you haven't watched it yet, you can skip ahead until you hear me talking about developing your psychic abilities. So what happened in the episode is they go in and they meet the owner, and he says that within a couple months of the episode that things had been becoming aggressive on location, and he wasn't sure why that was happening. And he gave the team a rundown. So if you've ever seen an episode of Ghost Hunters, you know how this rolls. They talk about the activity, a little bit about the history, and then they go right into the nighttime investigation stuff. So in the first night, they went in there and they had some interesting things. But part of the history of what they heard about the place was that there was mistreatment of women. So they went in there armed with that kind of knowledge, and they had a very negative night. Now, Grant in the show the next day talks about what kind of information they had and was like, well, we didn't verify any of this. That this may just be misinformation, and not on purpose by the owner. It's just what they were told when they purchased the building and things that they had heard. So it's not on purpose misinformation, which happens during investigations sometimes. Both sometimes it's on purpose they give you on purpose bad info to get you there. Or they just don't have the right information and they're just going on what they have, which is, if I hate to go off on this, but if you're an investigator, you always have to do your own research. It's okay to listen to what the claims are, but make sure that you get your historical facts correct. No matter if it's a brand new home experiencing something or, a place that's been around for 500 years, make sure you're getting your history right, because it could really make the difference in the investigation. And that's sort of what Grant was saying. The next day, the second part of the episode is that they didn't know what the real history was, so they changed their tactics in the investigation during nighttime, and everything seemed to calm down. They didn't have any more negative issues during their investigation that they brought up on the TV show, which shows that if you go into a location and are even accidentally provoking something there, you could get some really negative results back. It'd just be like you going into any stranger's home and accusing them of something, and if they didn't do it, they're going to fight back. As opposed to you going to a stranger's house and being nice to them and you elicit nice response. So that's the same thing with the paranormal. If you go in there with bad stuff and you start hurling accusations or being upset and emotional in a way that doesn't really fit the setting, you may get a negative flashback. So keep that in mind. All right. So that was Ghost Hunters in a nutshell. It was a pretty good episode. I enjoyed it. I'm definitely going to be tuning in this week for the next one. And I think they're doing a really good job. And I think our buddies Jay, Dave, and Steve are going to be coming back really soon. October 11th, I want to say. They're coming back with Ghost Nation. And I don't remember what channel that's on. I'm going to have to wait. I think it's on Travel Channel. Yep, Travel Channel. So we'll definitely be tuning in and talking about that as well. So that's really cool. All right, let's get to the last part of this. Let's talk about turning on your own psychic abilities. Hold on, Scott. I don't have any psychic abilities. I don't know even what psychic abilities really are or how to recognize them. Well, I got news for you. That's why I'm here. I'm going to help you because I think that everybody on some level has some sort of psychic ability. A lot of people have natural occurring abilities that they kind of don't recognize. And, that's, I guess, probably most of us, including myself, up until, a couple of years ago. I had very natural abilities that I didn't understand what was happening around me. I thought everywhere I went was haunted, whereas it turns out I was just a little bit more perceptive than other folks. So let's talk about how to recognize those things, okay? So I don't really have a test or anything like that or parameters. I don't know. This is very unscientific. It's just based on people that I've spoke to that are more intuitive, they're psychic, they're empaths, they're more mediums, and how they perceive things, okay? So let's just start. I have my notes right here. I took notes. That's right, I took notes. And being that I'm not on camera, you can't see that I'm looking at my notes, and, I'm just telling you about it. So that's fun. So let's see. I have... I'm listening to my family in the background have a really good time upstairs, so I'm trying to get through this. I hope you're enjoying this, by the way. ScottyTheNJMedium.com. Let's see. And if you haven't yet, and you're listening on YouTube, do me a favor. Click the like button and hit the old subscribe button. It's fun. Because we do this podcast a lot. There's going to be more vlogs, and there's more stuff coming because it's almost October, and we're going to do some really cool, fun, paranormal stuff. All right, so turning on your own psychic ability. First off, let's identify what might be the strongest part for you in your psychic abilities. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. So if you told me how to hammer a nail verbally, I could hear you and I could think about it and I might be able to do it. If, let's say you stood in front of me and hammered a nail, I definitely get it. I'd figure it out. So I'm a much better visual learner than hearing something about something, right? So if you read a book to me, I probably won't comprehend it as well as if somebody made a movie about it and I watched it and I'd follow perfectly. But on the other hand, I can read a book really well and my imagination is just on fire all the time. So I am very good at visualizing what I'm reading, and that's kind of how I learn too. But let's talk about sight. So if you can close your eyes for a second right now, as long as you're not driving. If you're driving, do not close your eyes. You keep your eye on the road. And you can do this later when you get home. So if you're driving, don't do this. But you can listen to what I'm talking about and then apply it later. You can close your eyes and let's just imagine for a minute. Let's do something that we don't see every day. Let's imagine a giant gray castle. And it has 2 towers, one to each side. And in the middle, it has a giant turret. Out front is a moat. There's a couple horses, people walking around. They're very unclean. There's not much good bathing water. And as we're doing that, we can kind of smell the horses. We could smell the earth and the air. And we could look up into the sky and it's blue. And it's a pretty warm day. The sun's out. We can check that out real quick. And it's beaming down on the castle and bringing a lot of light to it. And we could walk down the dirt path that leads up to the castle. We could walk through the front gate and inside. And we can look all around and see all the different activities that are happening. There's people walking everywhere. There's people selling things. There are little kids running by us. There's different other kinds of smells of food cooking. Maybe we can hear some people yelling from a local inn or a pub. All right? So if you can see all that and sort of start to smell it, then you have a very good ability or a very good chance at being very clairvoyant. Now let's talk about something a little bit different now. Let's talk about sound. So I have friends that are musicians that if you were to play them a song on a radio, like that has a guitar riff or a piano riff, they could hear it and play it back on their own instrument. So I would never be able to do that in a million years. I'd have to watch a guitar player's hands, or I'm not a piano player, but if I want to get the notes, I'd have to look at their hands and watch it, and then I'd just mimic it. So that's how I would learn. I could never do it by sound. Now, if you think that you could hear sounds like guitars and then be able to maybe apply that somehow back, then you probably have a very good ability at having clairaudience. But we can take that a little bit further. Are you good at listening to that little voice inside of your head that tells you to do something or not to do something? So if you're driving down the road and you're going to make a left or a right, and normally you go right, but today that voice inside your head says, hey, actually today, go the other way, make a left. And you're like, I don't know why I'm going to do this, but I'm going to listen to that little voice. I'm going to go left. And you go left. And then later on, you get where you're going, you whip out your phone, you jump on Facebook, your town page is up there on the Facebook, and you say, hey, there was a motor vehicle accident about a half mile from where you live. And if you had turned right, you would have been stuck in 2 hours of traffic and never had made it to where you were going on time. So if you're good at listening to that inner voice, or when somebody's going to call you, or you think about somebody and then they call you, then you have a very good chance of being clairaudient. And that's really awesome too. And then the third one is the emotional feeling of things happening around you without you having knowledge of them. So let's say, I've heard this story a lot. I woke up in the middle of the night. I didn't know what was wrong, but I felt like I had to call my mom. So I call my mom, and she's not answering. It's 2:30 in the morning, so maybe she's sleeping. But I still have this aching feeling in my stomach that I need to get in touch with my mom. So at 2:30 in the morning, I get in the car, I drive across town to her house, I knock on the door, and now I'm getting worried because there's no answer. But again, it's 2:30 in the morning, maybe she's sleeping. Anyway, I get out the house key and I open the door and I go in and I find my mom on the floor in the bathroom, away from the telephone and unable to yell loud enough for me to hear. Boy, am I glad that I listened to that emotional response of my body, and I knew there was something wrong and I had to go. So if you have that ability, that is very empathic and something you might call clairescence. So for the next couple days, I want you to think about those three things that I talked about. Are you a visual learner? Do you listen to that voice inside your head really well? And also, do you feel things very deeply that motivate you to do things? And if that is the way it is, and especially if you didn't know about why you were motivated to do those things, and you do them and you come up with positive results often, then that's something that you need to be thinking about. Those are just like the tip of the iceberg for psychic abilities. And there's more than that, but those are like the real basic ones and the easiest ones to explain. So I'd like for you to just take a couple minutes when you're done listening to this and really think about what I said. And then I'm going to build off of this from podcast to podcast. I'll talk about each one individually. And if you want me to build on something that I haven't talked about, do me a favor, head over to ScottyTheNJMedium.com, read up on the blogs that touch on a lot of this, then head over to my Facebook page, Scotty the NJ Medium, send me a message and say, hey, I've been listening to your podcast and I'd like to know about X, Y, and Z. We're also going to be talking more about developing a relationship with our spirit guides, and we're going to talk about tarot cards down the road. We'll talk about some things that I don't know about, like palm reading. And why would I talk about that? Because it makes me have to learn about it. And I really love to learn. So we'll do that as well. We're going to talk about all things spiritual, psychic, mediumship, and beyond. and Akashic Records, which is one of my favorite things in the entire world. And of course, we're always going to talk about stuff that's paranormal because that's my favorite. And it's just the best. I love paranormal stuff. It's my favorite. So with that being said, keep in mind we're going to be going to the Shanley October 5th, which is in 2 weeks now, not even. I'm going there with Mike and Brian from Demon Files. And then beyond that, we have some other paranormal investigations that we're going to be doing. And we're going to be working on something else, another little project between the few of us. So it should be pretty interesting. Oh, plus local spirits. I think Chris is still locked up in the basement. I might have to go check up on him. He's been down there editing like crazy still. I know it's a pain in the neck when it's a bunch of amateurs trying to put something together, but it's like a labor of passion at this point. We really want to get the first episode done and then start doing the next ones. Hopefully it'll be easier. We'll see. If you haven't yet, go head over to YouTube. You're probably listening to this on YouTube, so just do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe, make sure that you're clicking on the other videos, give them a listen, let me know what you think, what else do you want to talk about, and I guess that's about it for today. I appreciate you stopping by, as always. If you're interested in booking a reading, you can catch me over on Scotty the NJ Medium's Facebook page, send a message, and somebody will send you info on rates and all that kind of cool stuff. All right, guys and ladies, thanks for listening. I really appreciate you hanging out with me every week now. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. I'll talk to you real soon. Have a great night. Talk to you soon. See ya.